Welcome in on a big news Friday, everybody. I'm Reed Cowan. So coast to coast and worldwide, we are seeing a world react to the impacts of that massive tech outage. We're talking about businesses crippled, flights grounded, and a whole lot more. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Let's go. Let's start with news from our communities. Mourners in Pennsylvania saying their final goodbyes to the man killed during that assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. Comperatore died while shielding his family from the gunfire. This is a live look outside right now, outside a church where a massive American flag is hanging from the ladder of a fire truck where he served as a volunteer firefighter. We're going to continue watching that one throughout this broadcast. You know, that life-saving act of bravery by Comperatore commanded a powerful moment last night at the Republican National Convention. You see Donald Trump there displaying his volunteer fire suit on stage. That was a big moment, but let's talk about Donald Trump's speech as he accepted his party's nomination. It was the longest convention speech in history, clocked in at 1 hour and 33 minutes. Donald Trump told the crowd about his experience as bullets flew during the assassination attempt.
My hand was covered with blood, just absolutely blood all over the place. I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack, and in one movement proceeded to drop to the ground.
CBS News campaign reporter Tareen Small joins us live now from Grand Rapids, Michigan, where Trump is expected tomorrow. Okay, this is an important battleground state. What do we expect as we look forward?
Yeah, well, this Saturday we're expected to see not just Trump, but for the first time in a duo setting, J.D. Vance, his running mate, speak to a crowd of supporters. This is pretty important. Like you said, Michigan is one of those battleground states here in the Midwest that the Trump campaign is hoping to flip after. This is the same state that went for Donald Trump in 2016. Joe Biden was able to make a convincing argument that he best represents the interests of voters in places like Michigan. And J.D. Vance is a pretty interesting pick for the president, considering he comes from Ohio. A lot of Vance's speech on Wednesday night really invoked the values of folks within the heartland. A lot of the times, as he put it, a lot of people speak to the interests of the coast. But, Reed, as we saw, J.D. Vance is looking to make a play for folks within the Rust Belt where he comes from.
Well, the state of Michigan influenced greatly. The state of Michigan influenced greatly by the auto industry. And any time a presidential candidate is in the state of Michigan, they talk about unions. They talk about the auto industry. Do we have any idea of the position of Trump and what he'll sell to them in the state of Michigan as it pertains to auto?
Well, he's most likely to bring up the fact that he invited the Teamsters president to speak during the National Convention, the Republican National Convention, which was pretty unusual considering that Democrats for the longest time have had a pretty strong grip on on Labor Party unions. But what we'll likely hear, though, is a continuation of the theme, which is what had really carried through this entire week, which is a call for unity, not just among the Republican Party, but potentially pitching a bigger tent. Nikki Haley spoke about that during her speech. She said that in order to win over not just her supporters, but a lot of the people she was speaking to when she sought the presidency, they'll have to speak beyond just Republican talking points and talk directly to independents and maybe some disillusioned Democrats.
Tareen on the stream. Nice to have you with us today. Thank you so much. We're also getting more details about the hours leading up to that assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. Before the shooting, the father of the shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks, called police concerned about the whereabouts of his son. We're also learning that local law enforcement was not aware the shooter had a gun until bystanders saw and sounded that alarm. So coming up on CBS News 24/7, we'll have more updates on this investigation from Pennsylvania. We know so many people in our nation have so many questions about that. Meanwhile, Republicans and Democrats dealing with dueling headlines today. For Democrats, the headlines are not ideal for their presumptive nominee for the presidency. Overnight, Senator Jon Tester joined the growing chorus asking President Biden to drop out of the presidential race. Another voice of dissent and another day of President Biden recovering at home in Delaware after he tested positive for COVID, sidelining him from his campaign. CBS News White House reporter Willie J. Inman joins us now live from Delaware. Yesterday, we heard that update from the president's doctor, told us he's doing well. What's the update on his health right now?
Hey there, Reed. Well, we haven't heard from the White House just yet in terms of the president's health. But as you mentioned, we heard yesterday that the president was on the mend, that he was continuing to take Paxlovid, that he didn't have a temperature, but that he is, of course, behind closed doors, isolating in light of this COVID-19 diagnosis. But this comes at a really just interesting time for the president and his political career. Of course, there have been many Democrats, including the latest Montana Senator John Tester, who have called on the president to end his presidential campaign. But the campaign is doubling down. The president has mentioned in past interviews as lately as this week that he is not dropping out of the race. I want to play some sound from Jen O'Malley Dillon from MSNBC earlier today.
Yes, of course, we have a lot of work to do to make sure that we are reassuring the American people that, yes, he's old, but he can do the job.
Now, she's stating the obvious there, that we all know that the president is old. We, of course, have seen him age. And that was one of the main concerns that a lot of voters around the country have. If you look at public polling, that President Biden may just be too old to take on the job for another 4 years. So the campaign doubling down, but also stating the obvious, saying that President Biden is not dropping out of the race, although we have continued to see those calls both publicly and behind closed doors as well. Reed.
Where we appreciate it. Thank you so much. So while President Biden remains sidelined, Vice President Kamala Harris, she's going to the same state where Republicans just went wheels up to go to other states. She is going to be campaigning in Milwaukee. The reason she's going there is to offer a counterpoint to everybody who will listen to her, counterpoints to everything Republicans had to say. Now, this is her 5th visit to that important battleground state of Wisconsin this year. Is your flight delayed today? When we come back, more revelations from that massive tech outage that all of us woke up to and dealt with. Until then, we'll watch the monitors for breaking news. Before we leave you, though, we want to take you live right now to Pennsylvania. These are live images for a funeral procession for, of course, the hero, volunteer firefighter who died at the Trump rally during that assassination attempt. Corey Comperatore and his community rallying together, a somber service. We'll go there. CBS News 24/7 in your communities for your stories when we come back. Yes, we're a national broadcast, but our nation is made up of communities. And today we are in this community in Pennsylvania. We're thinking about Corey Comperatore, volunteer firefighter who, during the assassination attempt on President Donald Trump, during that assassination attempt, saw danger, saw his family next to him, and chose to throw his body over theirs. He saved their lives. This has been highlighted not only in the national narrative for days, as we have prepared for what we are seeing now, which is his funeral procession and what will be his funeral at a church just down this country road in Pennsylvania, but it also took center stage last night, at the last night of the Republican National Convention. The candidate for the Republicans, former President Donald Trump, brought Corey's firefighter uniform, his volunteer firefighter uniform that he often put on to serve his community to save lives, and paid tribute to him and his life as he gave it, saving the lives of his family members. So you see right there that American flag draped. That is where his hearse will pass under on the way to funeral services. The funeral services, by the way, are private, but we have been allowed this vantage point so we can have this shared experience on CBS News 24/7 on the stream. Our video monitor is bringing us stories of a tech outage spanning the globe, from Hong Kong to India, Australia, all throughout the United Kingdom and right here in the United States. Microsoft software and their systems went down, caused a rush from many to try to find a fix. In fact, airports all over the world at a standstill. They are slowly getting flights back in the air. That was a software upgrade to blame, pushed out by cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike. You probably didn't even hear about them until today. but it looks like CrowdStrike will be in the vernacular for some time, and it looks like that software update is to blame for this. But at the counter at airports, frustrating time for travelers today. In fact, we talked to many of you out there. Traveler Vincent, one of you, out at the Newark airport.
People spend thousands of dollars to go on vacation or go home or go visit family, and this is the situation that we get put through between these airline companies that make millions of dollars. It's pretty crazy, pretty insane.
That's the sound of frustration out there from Vincent. Misery, too. So many of you are feeling the very same thing. Check out this map from the website FlightAware, and you can see all of the areas affected here in these United States. By the way, this map is called the Misery Map. You see that graph there on the right side of your screen. That represents the airports from the very top to the very bottom, showing the worst of the situation. And it looks like ATL, which is a huge airport, that one is experiencing the greatest problem. Right there at the top of your screen, nationwide, 1,547 delays. And at this very moment on the stream, we're reporting 420 cancellations. So CBS News senior transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve, he's been watching that website as well. Chris, how did we get here?
Well, Reed, and actually those numbers you're counting there are just for a few hours snapshot. The actual number of delays and cancellations for the entire day, much higher. You're talking about almost 6,200 flights delayed since midnight to present. And when we're talking about cancellations, we're well over 2,200 at this point in the U.S. alone. So that misery map tells you the story of what's happening right now. But the scope of this problem, much bigger when we go back in time. In fact, we've got a cool animation from Flight Radar 24, I think, where we can show you sort of how the air traffic disappeared as this outage kicked in and the airlines had to hold their flights. Basically, when this CrowdStrike Microsoft issue came up, many of the airlines lost the ability to sort of communicate their back office software that they need to push out flights. Their reservation system wasn't working right. The weight balance, what they use to calculate, make sure the balance on the plane is right, give dispatch orders, they couldn't do it. And that means they can't push out flights. We've seen video of Spirit Airlines employees handwriting airline tickets like it's 1985 all over again. That's a tremendously slow way to try to push out flights. So people were doing whatever they could, but you take the computers out of the game, and it's very, very hard to run a major airline.
Wow. Okay, Chris Van Cleve, we appreciate your expertise. You have been there for us all day long. Thank you. We have a feeling you're going to have a long day. So let's jump the map and our monitors to a place where planes may not be taking off, but the heat is. Arizona has scorching temperatures today. Right now, there's an excessive heat warning in effect for that state. And that warning comes as more than a dozen attorneys general right now are pushing the federal government to declare major disaster status in areas where wildfires are prevalent, smoke from wildfires are prevalent, and extreme heat. Well, they actually made that push in a letter to the Federal Emergency Management Association this week. They claim climate change will only make smoke and heat get worse going forward. In fact, we just got this to back that argument up from Dr. Joellen Russell. Listen.
This is a very expensive, very tragic and awful disaster that's getting worse and worse. These are unnatural disasters. These are being, fueled by excess carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. They're getting longer, they're getting more intense.
Well, you see that background there of cactus in Arizona, and it's hot there, very hot indeed. Zoe is watching as the heat bears down.
Oh, yeah, the heat is only going to continue to increase this weekend, and that means wildfire danger is only going to become exacerbated as near record-breaking high temperatures are going to return. Again, it's all across the west coast of the United States. The east coast finally cooled down, so that's good news for them. But the west coast not going to be nearly as lucky this weekend, where we are expecting widespread record-breaking temperatures from the Great Basin up to the inland areas of the Pacific Northwest and down to the desert Southwest, where once again triple-digit high temperatures are expected near to record-breaking from Las Vegas up to Salt Lake City. Boise, Idaho, 105 degrees this afternoon. That is about 20 to 30 degrees above average for them. Those are all things to keep in mind, and that does mean heat-related illnesses are going to become a much bigger factor and a much bigger issue as we step out tomorrow. Today, it's not going to be nearly as widespread, but it is going to be an issue for a lot of locations. But again, it's tomorrow. You see those areas in purple, those areas in red across the Great Basin, the inland areas of the Pacific Northwest, and even down to the desert Southwest. This is where our biggest risk is going to lie. A lot of water is going to be necessary. This is our view Saturday. Check out Sunday. It's not going to get much better into Sunday either. It's going to be that narrow corridor, again, from the northern parts of the Pacific Northwest all the way down to the desert Southwest that are going to be dealing with excruciating heat. Again, record-breaking high temperatures, 20 to 30 degrees above average. And likely it's going to stay pretty warm up across the northern Great Plains over the next 6 to 10 days. Luckily, the Pacific Northwest will be getting a cool down by later this week. This weekend, though, unfortunately, the heat is going to be on. All things that we're going to have to keep our eyes on, and make sure you practice that heat safety. Reed?
Zoe, we talk about a warming planet. I want to show our viewers this video coming off the feeds. This takes us to Spain. Wildfires and smoke and heat there also as firefighters do battle with this fire. This one playing out at an industrial park, and look at that. This is from Poliña, about 25 miles away from Barcelona, and you can see firefighters doing battle literally with a giant there. This video coming in showing one hose going into an inferno. We'll be watching this one very closely as we continue to have an international focus. And speaking of that, we have more breaking news regarding the sentencing of the first U.S. journalist detained in Russia since the Cold War. A verdict in that case. And when we come back, we'll let you know what the verdict is and how it actually could be a playing card between the Biden administration and Russia in a prisoner swap. We'll have that in just a minute. Our video monitors take us to New York, where former movie mogul Harvey Weinstein faces a judge once again. So this is a hearing ahead of his retrial on rape and sexual assault charges. Big development here. Last week, prosecutors revealed they intend to bring more and new charges to Harvey Weinstein after more women agreed to testify against him. Weinstein has previously been found guilty of rape, but earlier this year, New York's highest court of appeals vacated the conviction, citing evidence that was not relevant to the charges shown to the jurors. Here is some interesting legal play for you today. Get this. Based on the Supreme Court ruling that led a judge to dismiss the classified documents case against former President Trump, Hunter Biden's lawyers asking federal judges in California and Delaware to throw out the criminal tax and gun cases against him. Why? They make the very same argument that Judge Aileen Cannon in Florida made in dismissing the Trump case, essentially that the special counsel in the Hunter Biden cases was unconstitutionally appointed. We're also learning the man who was the chief financial officer of the Trump organization has just been released from jail. We're talking about Allen Weisselberg. He spent 100 days at Rikers Island Jail Complex in New York right after he pled guilty to 2 counts of perjury, admitting that he gave false testimony about the size of former President Trump's apartment. Weisselberg also served a separate jail sentence, we understand, for fraud. Our video feed's bringing us the developing story of an American journalist charged with spying in Russia. We've got an update for you from Russia. Evan Gershkovich, the Wall Street Journal reporter held prisoner in Russia, convicted today of espionage, sentenced to 16 years in a maximum security prison. Today, there's an important question with this development. CBS's Elizabeth Palmer looking at whether this could now lead to a prisoner swap between Moscow and Washington.
The guilty verdict was pretty much a foregone conclusion, and the court has handed down a very heavy sentence for a crime the U.S. government and the Wall Street Journal and Evan Gershkovich himself say he did not commit. He was arrested in March of 2023, so he's already spent more than a year in a notorious Moscow prison called Lefortovo. Originally, he was picked up on a reporting trip to a central Russian city and charged with gathering intelligence for the CIA on a tank manufacturer that makes some of the machines Russia uses in Ukraine. The Kremlin claimed it had irrefutable evidence that he was guilty, but we don't know what prosecutors presented in court because the proceedings have been closed to the media from the beginning. President Putin has hinted broadly that Russia would be willing to let Gershkovich go in a prisoner swap, and there's been speculation he could be traded for a KGB agent who's currently doing jail time in Germany for a political assassination. assassination. The Russians also said no deal would be done until the trial was over. Well, it's now over, but there's still no knowing how much or if this gets Evan Gershkovich any closer to freedom. Reed?
So that now puts our focus on President Joe Biden and what he may be doing here. So we got this statement on the Gershkovich conviction from President Biden while he isolates due to COVID. The president says, I have had no higher priority than seeking the release and safe return of Evan. Paul Whelan also, he adds, and all Americans wrongfully detained and held hostage abroad. He went on to say, Evan has endured his ordeal with remarkable strength. We will not cease in our efforts to bring him home. Our video feeds take us to Texas and the city of Houston still reeling after Hurricane Beryl's damage. You know, people going into the weekend are hoping that everybody will have the electricity back on. There has been a lot of progress made, but people like Houston's Scene Do that you're about to meet say some neighborhoods are still in the dark. They're still frustrated with the power company.
Centerpoint's been on TV celebrating the fact that, 98% of power has been restored. You're the last couple of people that still don't have power this many days out from the storm. I mean, it's extremely frustrating.
Well, you heard her say the word Centerpoint. Well, a follow-up for you. Remember, Centerpoint Energy got in hot water with Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who wants answers. We are getting some today for you. Centerpoint says they made mistakes in the aftermath of that hurricane, including what they call a major gap in keeping the community informed. Look at this, our video monitor showing what drivers had to deal with in Louisiana. Downright wet. This is video from Jefferson Parish. That's about 45 miles outside of New Orleans. Zoe, we look at this video and we realize we're still in July. There's a lot more summer to go, and it looks like no relief is in sight.
No, it seems like really the severe weather just keeps coming every single day. We have at least some potential of severe thunderstorms or flooding, and we are again seeing that potential today, especially as we head across the central United States. But that reinforcing cold front that impacted the East Coast yesterday is also going to continue to impact them today. It might bring them additional flooding concerns, but again, it's going to be that area across the central United States that we are more concerned about when it comes to that severe weather potential. But excessive rainfall is still going to be an issue as we step out today. The excessive rainfall spans, again, similar places that it did yesterday. We're going to be seeing it all the way from eastern North Carolina down into the Gulf Coast states, and it's impacting eastern New Mexico as well because of the monsoon. So let's take a closer look at the exact impacts of severe weather, because this is our excessive rainfall outlook. The severe weather outlook is slightly different, as again, the reinforcing cold front from yesterday, yes, it's dropping a lot of rain, but it's this system that's going to develop across the central United States that is going to create a lot more issues when it comes to that severe threat. That area in orange right here, that's an enhanced risk. That's a level 3 out of 5 on our severe weather scale. Basically, we are more concerned about the chance for damaging wind gust in this little area right here, and the little hatched marks that you see, that is a significant severe risk where there is likely going to be widespread wind gust upwards of 60 to 75 miles an hour. And it's not just the winds, it's also the hail, about a 15% risk of large damaging hail up across Nebraska as well. So winds down near Kansas, hail up across Nebraska. And again, that storm system will continue to push south throughout the afternoon and evening ahead of us, and it might even impact the overnight hours. So this is our view at around 2 a.m. Keep those alerts on loud overnight tonight. Severe weather is going to continue across the Great Plains. Reed?
You have your passport, Zoe? Good. Okay, so we have this video out of Austria where we are going to go right now. Look at this. 300 people tried to break a national record in ice bathing. This is Vienna. That's the effort to stay cool there. They had to stay in that pool filled with ice for 20 minutes. They had to show how tough they were. In fact, they did this not only to have some community bonding there to try to stay cool. One of the goals of the challenge was to raise money for the Austrian Paralympic Committee. 1, 2, 3, warm it up, then take the plunge. Eesh. When we come back, we're going to go back to one of our communities that's hurting in our country, Pennsylvania, where we're getting more information about how much time the Secret Service had between knowing there was a shooter and the alert that ended his life. We're back in a few. CBS News 24/7, rooted in our communities, and you see that American flag right there. That is there, and so are so many people gathered on the side of the road to pay their final respects to Corey Comperatore. You know, last night, as you saw on the Republican National Convention stage, Donald Trump survived that assassination attempt, but as the former president highlighted, there was one who did not. Corey threw himself over his family to save their lives and lost his own. CBS News' Shelley Bortz joins us live right now from Buffalo Township, Pennsylvania. Shelley, private services, we understand, but a very public showing of love. What can you tell us about his funeral?
Yeah, you're right. The funeral service was private, and it just ended here moments ago. But right, you know, publicly, there were hundreds upon hundreds of people throughout this entire week that came to pay their respects to an American hero. That's what he's being called. Family, friends, and even complete strangers. I'm going to step out of the way of the camera. You can't see much right now, but just moments ago, a procession consisting of police cars, motorcycles, and fire trucks, as many as 500 fire trucks, some from even out of state, went up that hill you see right now. They're leading another fire truck draped in black bunting with Comperatore's coffin wrapped in an American flag to the Buffalo Township Fire Department, where he was a longtime volunteer. Now, the procession will end at that volunteer fire department, and then a private service at Comperatore's final resting place will take place with just family.
All right. Thank you so much for that update. This is an important part of the story, and we do see a community hurting there. So let's get back to last night's speech by former President Donald Trump. He accepted his party's nomination. It was the longest convention speech in history, clocked in at 1 hour and 33 minutes. Trump told the crowd about his experience as those bullets flew during that assassination attempt. And you know what? We also have this information just in right now. So we compare and contrast what's going on in the Republican Party and the narrative and the heat there behind the former President Donald Trump, who wants the keys to the White House back, and what is a very difficult time for the Democrats. And this is yet another person in Congress asking the president to step aside. A lengthy letter we just got in our hands from Representative Zoe Lofgren. You know, she was on the House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack, and I just want to read you what she has just delivered to President Joe Biden. She says, "As I am aware that you have been provided data indicating that you in all likelihood will lose the race for president, I will not go through it all again. Simply put, your candidacy is on a trajectory to lose the White House and potentially impact crucial House and Senate races down ballot. It is for these reasons," that she concludes, "that I urge you to step aside from our party's nomination to allow another Democratic candidate to compete against and beat Donald Trump in the November election." Dated July 18, Representative Zoe Lofgren, and right here in our hands. So far, we have seen no response from the Biden campaign, but as soon as we get it, you will see it here, right here on CBS News 24/7. So as we mentioned, let's get back to that. Trump's speech was the longest in convention history, 1 hour and 33 minutes. And Trump on stage told the crowd about that experience as bullets flew during that assassination attempt.
Bullets were continuing to fly as very brave Secret Service agents rushed to the stage, and they really did. They rushed to the stage.
So meanwhile, we know the day and time when the Secret Service Director, Kimberly Cheadle, will testify before lawmakers on the House Oversight Committee. Republican lawmakers, including House Speaker Mike Johnson, want Cheadle to resign after the shooting that grazed Trump's right ear and killed Corey Comperatore, injured 2 others. CBS News correspondent Charlie DeMar in Butler, Pennsylvania, as that community awaits Cheadle's testimony.
And Reed, sources with direct knowledge of the investigation say that the shooter's father attempted to get in contact with him before the shooting took place, which again raises the question that his own parents had concern about him before this incident took place. And the timeline of events also coming into focus for us. Sources telling us that they got alerted to a suspicious person about 20 minutes before the shooting took place. That 20-year-old was walking around the grounds here in Butler, Pennsylvania with a rangefinder, a backpack. A member of law enforcement actually snapped a picture of that 20-year-old and sent it up the chain of command. Former President Donald Trump took the stage at about 6 o'clock. About 10 minutes later, that's when the Secret Service got word that there was a commotion going on the right side of former President Donald Trump. By that time, it was too late. and those shots were fired. Reed?
All right, thanks for that update. Our video feed's keeping you up to date on massive flight delays and cancellations after the Microsoft software outage hit millions today. Looking live at Newark's airport in New Jersey right now, and we are seeing so many people are still dealing with the after effects. Planes are starting to take off just a little bit, but this is going to last throughout the day. Our video monitors also allow us to quickly jump to another airport. We're talking about LaGuardia in New York. That's where we find CBS News correspondent Bradley Blackburn. Bradley, good to see you, my friend. We understand that some flights are starting to take off, but we know those impacts are going to last for quite a while.
Yeah, they are. No question, Reed. And what we're seeing right now is people camped out here waiting for information. These are the kinds of scenes that we would normally see during a hurricane or a natural disaster. But in this case, the storm was that computer glitch that caused so many problems for the airline industry, but all kinds of industries around the world. We know that United Airlines, American, Delta, many other airlines all had issues this morning with their ticketing and booking systems. And of course, Reed, this is happening right during the middle of the summer vacation season. I'm standing in LaGuardia Airport right now. This is the terminal that primarily serves Spirit Airlines, and I want you to come with me. This is where people would normally check in. A good sign here, just in the last short time, all these kiosks were out of order and they flipped back on. And you know, normally, Reed, I would show you the big board and show you the delays and cancellations, but I can't because that monitor is still blacked out here, I'm told, because of the computer glitch. So that's having some interesting ripple effects for travelers today. Instead of looking for the board to find out where they're going to get to go on their flight, somebody is coming out of this door. It's happening right now, Reed, actually, carrying a megaphone and making flight announcements, giving people information in real time, telling them whether they're going to face delays or cancellations using that megaphone. So here we are in 2024 going very analog to deal with this problem, Reed.
Almost as if you had done that on cue, my good friend. It's good to see you on the stream. We know you did not. That was what we call reporters' timing and great luck. Bradley Blackburn, so nice to see you here today. You know, from things that fly to talking about things that float, this outage not only affected airlines, but now jumping the map to the Port of Los Angeles, they also experienced a backup operation for most of the morning. You can actually see in some of this video dozens of semi-truck trailers waiting to get access into that loading dock area of the port. And it is literally bumper to bumper. In every one of those big trucks, there's business, there's money. And as long as that sits on that freeway and isn't able to get where it needs to go, money is paused. And you're going to start to see that theme pop up in the United States this week and into next week, the costs of this outage. Microsoft. Crazy. And also, let's add to that. We just got this information. Healthcare systems also affected. Kaiser Permanente also admitted the outage affected some of their systems, but that Kaiser hospitals and medical offices are remaining open for service. So even your doctor, even your nurse having to deal with this today. When we come back, we're going to take you to the mountains out west. Some heavy hitters talking about our nation's security and also security on planet Earth. CBS News 24/7, streaming coast to coast and worldwide. We'll cross the map when we come back. Our video monitors and feeds take you now out west to Colorado, where some heavy hitters in global security are up in the mountains of Aspen, talking about security challenges, as well as the conflict in Gaza and that ongoing hostage situation. We just got this video off our feeds. This is Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Aspen. Listen.
I believe we're inside the 10-yard line and driving toward the goal line and getting an agreement that would produce a ceasefire, get the hostages home, and put us on a better track to trying to build lasting peace and stability.
So joining us now is CBS News intelligence and national security reporter Olivia Gosses. Okay, so we heard that we're getting close to having hostages released. Any bigger sense of a timeline there?
Sure, Reed, it's great to be with you again. And just to note, Secretary Blinken is actually one of the very few high-ranking senior government officials who actually made it out here to Aspen this week. There was a much more robust lineup. A lot of officials had to pull their participation down after the assassination attempt on President Trump last weekend. But as you just played there, yes, Secretary Blinken, what stood out from his remarks today was this relatively optimistic tone that he struck on the ongoing hostage talks in Gaza, saying that we are within the 10-yard line, but quickly acknowledging there thereafter, that sometimes that final stretch is the hardest one to close. So we are far from guaranteed a deal. As we all know, Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, is expected to visit Washington next week to address Congress, to meet with the president. When asked what he expected from those meetings and from that speech, the secretary said that, yes, indeed, he hoped to achieve some progress toward a closure of a hostage deal, but also to make progress on the security and governance structure that needs to be erected in Gaza after the conflict ends, something that the Israeli government has shown little indication of making progress on to date.
All right, Olivia, thank you so much for that. We want to let our viewers listen to an explosion that happened in Israel. Watch this. Major developing story out of Israel today. Look at that. This is a drone attack in a central district in Tel Aviv. It killed a man and injured at least 10 others. Who fired it? Well, the IDF says Houthi rebels in Yemen were able to get that explosive over the line and then get a hit. In fact, look at this video to our monitors right now. Smoke and debris seen just after that drone attack. This is in Tel Aviv. We understand a man died, at least 10 others injured, but it's early right now. The IDF says that those Houthi rebels in Yemen are to blame for that deadly blast, and they want to know more about perhaps who funded this. Just to give you an idea of where this happened, CBS's Deborah Pata reports this is just about a minute's walk, 1 minute walk from a U.S. Embassy office in Tel Aviv.
Israeli authorities say it was an Iranian drone fired from Yemen. Houthi rebels have claimed responsibility for the attack, which occurred just after 3 this morning local time. The drone was captured on camera as it pierced through Israel's air defense systems and exploded in central Tel Aviv, just near the U.S. consulate, although it's unclear whether this was indeed the target. We spoke to eyewitnesses who told us that they saw something flying towards them and then a massive fireball lit up the street. Shrapnel killed 1 man and injured at least 10 people and shattered the windows of shops and apartments. Israeli police collected the drone debris, which was strewn across a wide radius, and dashcam footage captured the roar of the unmanned aircraft just moments before the explosion. The drone failed to trigger warning sirens, which Israeli authorities say was a result of human error. All previous Houthi attempts to launch drone attacks on Israel have been intercepted. Reed?
Okay, so in a separate development, the top UN court says Israel's presence in the Palestinian territories in the West Bank is, quote, unlawful. The International Court of Justice says settlement construction there should stop immediately and that Israeli presence there should end, quote, and these are their words, as rapidly as possible. So today's opinion from that 15-judge panel is non-binding, but it is a very strong statement on those settlements. Hey, our video feeds are now taking us to New Orleans. Look at this. Heavy rain means heavy flooding there. People sloshing around in that rain, and in some places they are braving driving through what are waterlogged streets. Streets are blocked right now for people's safety, but, you know, that means emergency vehicles can't get through. So they're having to find some workarounds, Zoe, and we understand the threat of more severe weather is a very real possibility in our country.
Yeah, they've been dealing with it all week long across the Gulf Coast states, across the East Coast, and more severe weather potential is on the way this afternoon as more reinforcing cold fronts, we've been seeing it all week long across the East Coast, continue to make their way across eastern parts of the United States. But there's also another area that we're concerned about, the central United States, that long area of cloud coverage. That will be very impactful over the next 24 hours. So let's take a look at where we are going to be seeing the most aggressive rainfall, because again, that is going to be an issue today and into tomorrow as well, as we are expecting excessive rainfall all the way from eastern North Carolina down to the Gulf Coast states and even impacting eastern New Mexico and a lot of the places in the desert Southwest that are dealing with the monsoon right now. So these are all things to keep in mind. And let's take a look at where it currently is, because again, it's the central parts of the United States not dealing with the excessive rainfall, but dealing with that better chance of severe weather. There is that enhanced risk, a level 3 out of 5, mainly for damaging wind gusts and large hail, all things to keep our eye on. Make sure you remain weather aware throughout this afternoon. Reed.
CBS News is in your communities, hearing your stories. It is our promise to you in our Eye on America series. So today we take you to Richmond, Virginia. Recent polling confirms that so many Americans feel that the current political landscape often is painful. It divides neighbors, divides families. CBS News chief investigative correspondent Jim Axelrod on a group that's now seeking common ground through the sharing of stories.
Gary right here. Here's something you don't see every day.
My name is Gary Sneed. I'm 66 years old.
Two men from different generations.
My name is Patrick Kleber. I'm 29 years old.
And opposite ends of the political spectrum.
I grew up in a conservative Catholic family.
Dyed-in-the-wool liberal.
Sitting down for a nice, civil chat.
You may not agree with everything that I say. It's okay.
That's what's most important.
StoryCorps' Claire LeBlond oversees this conversation.
It involves taking a brave step, like one small step.
The idea? In an online world where anger can fester anonymously, face-to-face contact might be the only hope.
There are levels of contact, particularly repeated contact, that can slowly start to change people's relationships to each other.
It's hard to hate someone you're actually in contact with.
Yeah, and that's what I hear a lot of participants find in their conversation.
Gary and Patrick aren't here to debate.
It's not about changing somebody's mind, getting your point across.
They're here to learn that assumption prevents us from seeing each other. The dyed-in-the-wool liberal?
I'm a staunch advocate of the Second Amendment.
The rock-ribbed conservative?
Honestly, I've come around on things like universal health care.
You want to eat some?
And that we are all more than our politics. These two men share the deep pain of significant loss.
I know you and your wife lost a child to a miscarriage. I lost a child at 15 years of age. We both belong to the club that no one should ever have to belong to.
Yeah. We'd only known she was pregnant for maybe 2 weeks and then went in for the first ultrasound and no heartbeat. And that was brutal.
We agree on many things.
Anyone can sign up to be part of a One Small Step conversation online if they're open to an idea.
My spirituality tells me that what you call God, I call the universe.
That disagreements don't have to be deal breakers.
I definitely fundamentally disagree.
That's fine.
One of the few things we do agree on these days in the divided states of America is just how divided we are. We did a poll asking people to give the State of the Union in a word. 61% chose divided, 5 times the number that chose united.
Sitting across from somebody tightens your lips.
And opens your ears?
I hope so.
50 minutes later, these two have taken one small step.
I want to thank you for opening up about your son, and I'm grateful that we had the opportunity to talk about that.
As am I, my friend.
No surprise to Claire LeBlond, who's conducted 198 of these.
We're so divided, so filled with contempt, and yet the one thing we're not doing is sitting with each other.
Yeah, that's not the world I live in, where everybody is so divided. I live in one small step world.
It may not be enough to solve the problem, but even one small step in the right direction is much better than none at all. In Richmond, Virginia, I'm Jim Axelrod for Eye on America.
Our stories define us and unite us. Don't you forget that. That's it for CBS News 24/7. We hope to see you next week. Thanks so much for watching.